This video is on the not so linear process or evolution from what we had to what we have now, and what we should and aren't doing with it, or not, depending on your opinions. 2600 BC and or earlier, poems and tales were put to paper, written in this case in Sumerian, but other languages probably did the same. By the year 2100 BC, that collection had become the Epic of Gilgamesh. 300 BC to 300 AD, a certain set of works done almost identical, the same pattern, became Biblio. 200 AD, in the history of printing on the Wikipedia article, is what I'm directing you to read, but 200 AD is about the midpoint where, I'm going to say this, it has nothing to do with the article, the majority of the population that could see a book kind of understood how it worked. And people who used literacy, printing, or writing and reading for the purpose of storing knowledge, which is power, was very focused. 1440 AD. The printing press came out. After 3,000 years of power through maintaining literacy in one group and illiteracy in another, it became important to break down this paradigm shift kind of thing and print up a Bible. At least part of it. I'm still ticked off about the Library of Alexandria. You're just going to have to live with that. Now we're going to skip forward past this, what was that, after 3,000 years of sitting on stuff and picking and choosing what is and isn't kept. Let's talk about 1960. Now, this period of time here, I had an organized list here that wasn't organized. Let me read the organized one. This is going to sound ass backwards. It is. Here we go. Wikipedia article references to the first occurrences of a practical demonstration of each of these things. Not when they actually happened, but when we first had a functioning copy of something. 1960. The Internet. An interconnection of networked systems. Doesn't matter if it's analog data, computers, whatever. But the idea was you'd set up a local network to do a process or be general purpose between a bunch of things and one thing, and then have them communicate with each other to share information and or act as a redundant array crisscrossing so that they couldn't be destroyed. Yes, atom bomb proofing your tax returns, I guess. But let's move on. 1964, BASIC, a language that was different than had been before, existed and would take what looked almost like English language wording and could be translated to other languages, would take in a set of instructions, run them in this not very direct way, and then you could tell it to compile it into a binary file, and it would run as fast as possible. That last part is some of you may not have heard about, but in binary conversion from BASIC was originally part of the system. It meant you could write any code, any program, any way you wanted to as a bin file. So we had the internet before we had BASIC, and then we had personal computers. Now, I would argue that this was actually conceptually in the wrong order. The personal computer concept is pretty simple. No, it's not, because the name gets bandied about, so you're going to have to read the article. But I'll give you an example. Let's say you have your cell phone, you set it down here and hook up a cable and have a screen, and have a keyboard, and what you type on the screen appears on the screen here, and you can tell the cell phone to put up anything you want to, play a YouTube video or whatever. But the keyboard and the screen don't have any smarts except to interpret what they're being told. Now, if you combine that keyboard and screen into one cabled hookup, that would be like a terminal. Now, if you had your cell phone, by the way, right now, that could be as powerful as 50 of the original computers back in the 1960s, those mainframes that filled up a room. Those were operated by a wall of lights that you had to run around collecting data from, or a printout, maybe a printer if you were lucky, and inputs that could be as simple as a keyboard or a whole bunch of switches. Writing a program consisted of typing stuff in literal bits, and if you're lucky, hexadecimal code. But now by 1965, you had something we're calling a personal computer. It had enough brains for you to run a copy of BASIC on it and then spit it to the mainframe. You could do batch jobs. That means you could have hundreds and hundreds of people up to one big computer, and each computer could, until they hit send, be a personal, isolated little machine. 1968. Watch the video called The Mother of All Demos. Just watch it. You need to. You might see things in there that we should have, that we did at one point in like 1990s and got rid of somehow. This was an example of forcing the system to behave like a true personal computer. You can watch it do all sorts of things that are excruciatingly high level that required no real computer knowledge if you wanted to rewrite that interface. In fact, people have taken the mother of all demos as an example for literally everything you're running right now. When I taught classes, I made people watch. I got a copy of VHS tape of that. I made them watch it. You have to watch it twice. Just watch it once through without interruption and watch it again. You'll miss a bunch. Same year, the microcomputer came out. Remember I was talking about the smart terminal with enough brains? This was much more expanded and could technically, from this point forward, depending on how you look at it, completely isolate itself from anything, but connect to it. Xerox Alto came out in 1973. 1975, the processor revolution. The MOS technology 6502 chip came out. The next year, the Zilog Z80. Then that same year, the Apple the Apple Computer Company came out. 1977, CP/M as an operating system came out. That'll be important in a minute. Same thing, same year, we had Commodore PET computer, the TRS-80, the Apple II series, and the home computer itself. CP/M can convert almost directly to DOS, the basis for Microsoft's op system. It's almost considered a ripoff. The Z80, the MOS, and then the Apple series and Commodores all ran on chips that could be interchangeable if you really wanted to push it, and people were writing programs back and forth between them. 1979, the Macintosh came out, arguably really one of the most extreme things on the planet. 1981, the IBM PC came out. A severely limited version of it called the PS2 came out. Because of the limitations imposed on it, people would buy two of them and interpolate back and forth and force them to work in the other's mode, and we began to see people making Macintosh ripoffs. MS-DOS came out the same year, which again is component capable for running CP/M, and therefore because CP/M and Xerox Alto and all of these other computers came out, interpolation and translation back and forth became commonplace. All of this was based on the machine sitting on your desk, never communicating, and then people figuring out they could use a phone line and transfer information by modem, which meant we could do all of the things you are doing now. ZX Spectrum 1982 came out, showing how absolutely mind-crushingly minimalist this could be, and then the Commodore 64 came out that same year. These are all still based on interchanging parts, but the IBM PC ran the x86 IBM chip standard. And again, these can be transliterated back and forth either through a high-level language like BASIC or a lower level like DOS, or binary conversion because the chips were somewhat compatible back and forth, and you could use each of these things in layers to do it, which meant software came out for every one of these things that was identical almost. The IBM computer was then superseded, in my opinion, by the Amiga 1000, most of you haven't heard of, 1985. 1989, the World Wide Web came out as a network of networks, the Internet. As a protocol to run on top of this network of networks, and was given away. Because up to that point, all these companies are trying to undercut each other, doing dirty deeds to each other. Hell, Microsoft Corporation tried to screw over DRDOS and CP/M and Apple. They were all fighting with each other. But this was done because the person who did it realized creating a standard protocol that everybody could use means they would adopt it, making a very careful effort to make sure it could be upgraded continually. We're now using the World Wide Web that was created in 1989, but really goes all the way back to the 60s, and the mother of all demos. Worldwide internet traffic through routers, cell towers, optical switches, Wi-Fi transceivers, cloud storage, your computer, all based on that because the World Wide Web standard had a weird protocol rule. If you make a piece of equipment that hooks up to the network, it must be able to act as a component in it, which means your cell phone, any random group of cell phones out in the middle of the desert in Zimbabwe, can be used as an internet. You just put it in relay mode and tell it to use the same protocol. The protocol you're using on your cell phone or on my web browser or on the cell phone chip, all the way down to the hardware level up to the software level, all runs on the same standard that every piece of equipment should be able to communicate with every other so that you can't tear it down, so that it's almost impossible to stop the signal. 100 million servers connecting to 750 million computers and 1 billion cell phones at any one time. So that gives you an idea what you're dealing with. We've gone from writing stuff in Sumerian on papyrus and collecting it for 500 years in order to put out the Epic of Gilgamesh, to spending from 300 BC to 300 AD creating a Bible that ended up getting truly printed almost 1,000 years later, to spending my lifespan, 50 some odd stinking years, getting to the point that you can watch this video or you can watch a cartoon. A 45-foot tall, 8-inch standard diameter, that's at one end, not the other, 2,000-pound green, 85% moisture softwood pine tree, standard. That's the harvestable height for practical usage within what we call a tree farm rather than a forest. Takes X number of years or decades to grow. It produces, if you were to convert it into dry sheets of paper 8 by 11, and 500 sheets per ream, 5 pounds per ream when you buy it. That's how much it weighs, not what it's called in poundage. A tree makes 20 reams, or about 100 pounds of paper. Now that starts at 85% moisture level. It's dropped to 5% by the time you get the paper. There's also losses due to knots and various types of material like bark versus cork being removed. And those are reused, recycled. Also, this could be just the material coming out from the shavings where you may be just making logs, and this is the leftover that's pulped. We get 50% dry yield moisture content conversion factor, or 5% total land, or a 17-to-1 ratio, meaning in some cases, if people talk about a log producing, X number of poundage, when you put the moisture back in, that's 1,700 pounds out of 2,000 pounds, or an 85% efficiency of recovery from an entire log to make paper. It's not wasted. See also that the same methodology, if you want to do the argument, depending on which politician talked yesterday, of we're making paper from the waste material from making planks and then drying them out. That's the standard that went on constantly until we came up with high-density storage. If you're not aware of it, microfilm and microfiche have existed since 1940s. So we could have easily compressed everything down to acetate or plastics and not used trees. Although trees can be grown or just harvested by growing by themselves. English Wikipedia's 7 million articles can convert to 22 gigabytes compressed on a single micro SD card, 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter by 1 millimeter thick. You can also make it into 3,000 some odd books, 700 pages each, or the equivalent to 97 Encyclopedia Britannica kits that you can go see at the store, buy, or see at the library. This would be the equivalent to around 4,000 reams of paper, because we go from 700 to 500, so it's a larger number. That's 21,580 pounds, or 11 tons in a library, or the equivalent to 215 trees. Coincidentally, your carbon offset throughout your life is about 200 trees if you replant. Or you can just put it on a thumb drive and keep it. How many of you have downloaded at bare minimum Wikipedia, which would be useful to skip about 7,000 years worth of time here if I go back in time with one microchip and a reader? Are you a waste of carbon for not having to have 250 trees cut down just to make your own personal library in a basement? Go visit your bookstore. Plant some trees. Buy an SD card, a 32 gig one, and shove Wikipedia on it. Install it as a bootable item. Make it run CPM for fun. Read. Learn. See the links below. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck.